All right, we're going to try doing this remotely. It feels very awkward for me, so sorry if it seems so stilted. Um, I'm going to try to not be distracted by the small me on the screen that looks strange. And instead, I'm going to look at this little llama sticker up here on the camera. So hopefully this works. All right, we left off. We just had our midterm over theism. And remember, we looked at Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And now we need to switch gears. We need to actually just kind of mentally take a ride over to a different reality called pantheism. And when you think of pantheism, the word tells you a little bit about what it means. Pan means the whole. If you have a panorama, you have a view of the whole. If there is a pandemic, you have a disease that has gone across the whole world. So pan, the whole, theism, God. The idea of pantheism is that God and the whole, the universe, are one. And don't think of God, and anytime we're talking in pantheism, don't think of God as a personal being with a name and a being. It's a concept, a force, an it, not a he. So the divinity, the ultimacy, your author uses the language of ultimacy. Ultimacy and physical world are one stuff. Now already you're going to see that pantheism is predicated on a philosophical concept called monism. And I'm going to figure out how to switch to the next slide. Pardon me. Let's see if that did it. No, sorry guys. There we go. There we go. All right. So you can see monism is mono, the idea that there's only one stuff. Now remember, in theism, there were at the very least two stuffs. There was God and everything else. I've got this kind of tiny little whiteboard here, and you know I love to doodle on the whiteboard. So let's review. In theism, we had God and universe, everything else. And so we had the very least two stuffs. We had God and all other. In pantheism, there's one stuff. There's no external deity. There's just the universe, and everything is contained within it. And so monism is not a religious term. It's a philosophical term that says there's only one stuffness. So you'll just need to keep in mind that shift, that everything is participant or manifestation of the one stuffness. All right, now I just have some notes here that pantheism, don't confuse that with paganism. Paganism we're not studying in this class. It didn't survive to be one of the great religions of the world. You know, the Greek and Roman pagan religions, of course. Anyway, skip on that. All right, let's go through our 8 questions that we did for a worldview. Remember, we did this with theism, and I'm going to consistently contrast theism and pantheism on my whiteboard. And I'm going to pause because I got to find an eraser. Hold on. Pause. All right, I'm back. All right, so the first question, what is really real? Now let's start with theism so we can kind of get our touch point. Remember, in theism, we said, in the beginning, God. And all theistic religions started with the ultimate reality being a personal being who is external to the universe. Well, in pantheism, there is no personal being external to the universe. What is the cosmos is all that there is. It's not naturalism. Naturalism says there's nothing ultimate or divine, that the material world is ultimate. But pantheism says, no, there's spiritual stuff, and that is ultimate. It's just manifesting often in physical terms. So in pantheistic religions, which include Buddhism, Hinduism, and New Age, we'll look at different forms of New Age, there's only one stuff. So let's go to my little board here. We have the universe, the cosmos. And at its ultimate, the highest level of reality is non-existence. It's non-stuffness. I can't tell if my face is going to be chopped off here. Non-physicality. It's just this force, or it's not, and it's not a physical thing where there's atoms or whatever physical stuff is made of. It is strictly a spiritual or a metaphysical reality. And it has no beginning, no end. It is impersonal. It does not know it exists. It's when we think of not personal, remember back when we were meeting together face to face, remember those good old days? I used the example of personal. I said ocean. Ocean is a vast force but it is not personal. It does not know it exists. It can't speak, act, or will. It has no concept of its own power. Or electricity, right? A vast force, it can give life if it's in a defibrillator, or it can take life if it zaps you with a bolt of lightning. But vast force, but it doesn't know it exists. It has no ability to be self-determining. And so that would be more of the ultimate in pantheistic religions, just this non-existence, this ongoing force that has no self-awareness. And in some forms of pantheism, it is the sum total of all that exists, physical and supraphysical, or material and metaphysical, above the physical. So what's really real is non-existence. Existence of any kind is finite. It's terminal. It's limited. And so if you contrast this with theism, pantheists would say, man, your theistic God is quite limited because he has a name and characteristics and, you know, a personality. And if he's entirely good, he can't be bad. So they would say that that's limiting and that non-existence has no limits. If you're feeling confused, don't worry, you're on the right track. We will reiterate this over and over. We'll see its version in Buddhism, we'll see it in Hinduism and in New Age. So track with me here. All right, I'm going to a new slide. Let's see. No. Oh, be patient with me, guys. By the time we get to the last lecture, I'll have this totally mastered. There we go. All right, what's the nature of the world around us? The external world. Well, it's kind of a redundant question. Remember, there's only one stuff. There's only this stuff. There's nothing external to the universe. So the universe and all that's in it is what is ultimate, and what is physical is less ultimate than what is metaphysical, above the physical world. So the external world is just an extension or a manifestation of this force that is the ultimate force of the cosmos. Remember when we were looking at theism, I was standing in front of class and I said, now look at me. And I said, here's what God does not do. I have to raise my arm high. He does not take his own stuff and shape it into a universe and then send it out there. Well, that's what, in pantheism, it's exactly what happens, is whatever the stuff of ultimacy, of godness, whatever that stuff is the stuff that's cast into the universe to be the physical world. And so the stuff is the same. I don't have my coffee cup, but let's see, I have a lamp right here. If that lamp is made out of the same stuff as ultimacy, of deity, then why not worship the lamp? So in theism, we had a prohibition on all idolatry because it's not made of God's stuff, and nothing physical is made of God's stuff. In pantheism, we have a proliferation of idolatry, particularly in Hinduism. If this is the same stuff as deity, just go ahead and connect to this. It's much easier. It's more accessible. And so ex deo creation is how we say that out of divinity or out of ultimacy is the same stuff that makes the physical world. So the physical world is a manifestation of the stuffness of ultimacy. But the physical world is not good. Remember in theism we have this story, God creates the heavens, the earth, and he says, good, 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 very good, right? And so there's this goodness to creation. In pantheism, anything that is existing in a physical world or a physical way is disconnected or disunified. And there's going to be this emphasis on unity of all stuff. And so let's say here's my giraffe, or here's my hippopotamus, or my little ladybug, or whatever I've got going here. These are all existences that are apart from the grand unity. So ultimately, at least philosophically, the goal will be for all of these individuated existences to be dissipated or kind of released from existence and become unified with oneness. You guys are too young to remember mercury thermometers, but I used to play with mercury when a thermometer broke. You were sick, that mom put the thermometer in your mouth, it would fall. break, and we didn't know it was not good for us. And so you could take this bead of mercury, and for whatever reason, mercury is kind of a highly viscous, I don't know the right scientific word, but it likes to glom together. And you could smash it with your hand, and these little beads of mercury would like go flying out. But what's funny is they would very quickly kind of crawl back together because they want to be together. There's a strong attraction between those mercury molecules. I'm sure some of you are taking chemistry courses and you know everything I just said was completely inaccurate. Well, in a way, though, that's kind of the situation of the pantheistic universe, that there's this one stuff, but it's gotten fractured and smashed out, and everything is existing in its own individuated existence. And this is the problem. And so in pantheism, existence of any kind is not good. Now, that doesn't mean that some existences aren't better than others, and that people who have happy lives aren't happy. But it does mean that philosophically, existence is not good, good, very good. It's bad, bad, very bad. Because, well, let's do a little test. If we were in class, imagine with me that we were talking and I ask you, how many of you have ever suffered? All of you would raise your hand. I've done this little test for 20 years and 100% of people seem to have suffered. How many of you exist? Raise your hand. How many of you, because you exist, you have suffered? All of us raise our hand. We suffer because we exist. Well, pantheism makes that kind of the philosophical motif that says existence is suffering. If you exist, you suffer. So non-existence is non-suffering. So non-existence is the end of suffering. And so to exist in any form is some degree of suffering. Even a pleasant, happy life is some degree of suffering. And so ultimately the goal of pantheistic religions is a system of non-existence. How would I release myself from a physical existence? Ergo, how would I release myself from suffering? Because they are synonymous. We'll come back to this. We'll really see how Hinduism says, here's some ways out. Buddhism says, here's the way out. New Age has different ways out of suffering, aka existence. So come back to that. All right. Number 3. What's the nature of humans? Contrast this. In theism, in the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth, and then he gets to humans, and in his image, he makes them, and he says, good, good, and about humanity, he says, very good. This really looks like me. Well, no pantheistic religion has those kind of creation stories. They don't have a personal, knowing creator who is carefully, lovingly, out of his goodness, creating the universe. All of their creation stories are conflict, chaos, bloodshed, violence. So some forces clash, and out of that come this explosion of existences. Or deities, let's see it like Hinduism, where they have a lot of deities. Maybe the deities are fighting, and out of each drop of blood comes certain types of people. Always stories of chaos and violence. Well, it's not good, good, very good. So the same is true with humans. We're just another manifestation of existences. So while the stuff of humanity is the same stuff of ultimacy, and that doesn't mean like DNA. No one in pantheism, they're not too worried about DNA, talking about the spiritual reality. But while the stuffness is the same, there's disconnection. One is disunified from ultimacy, and so remember, existence is suffering. So the story of humanity is suffering. And so the goal of every human, and of course the goal of every being in general, is to be released from existence, released from suffering. And so there's no particular specialness or goodness to human existence. Now, sometimes people hear me say those things and think, well, why don't pantheists, and we're talking about pantheists, talking about Buddhists, Hindus, New Agers, and sometimes people who are just spiritual, why don't they just, are they just miserable? Well, no, they're not just miserable. Just go back, many of you are Christians, go back to the Christian story where we say, oh, well, we're all sinners. Well, you don't just walk around like, oh my God, I'm just a sinner, nothing good can ever happen to me. No, you know that there's goodness in existence. There's goodness in human life. There's wonderful happiness. And yet, you live also with the reality that we're sinning. And every day we're sinning, hopefully less and less. And that we're affected by sin. This pandemic, right? It's an effect of sin. The world has gone wonky. And now we're all suffering because of this kind of meta effects of sin, not in our personal sin life, but in the universal life that has been affected by sin. All right. So humans are just another expression of this cosmic power, this cosmic energy that is manifesting. Now, what we're gonna find out is every pantheistic religion has a system of karma. So what determines your existence is karma. Now, there's a little bumper sticker you see sometimes that says karma is a bleep, and it's true. Karma is a blind moral force. By blind, it has no personality. It doesn't know it exists. So you can't negotiate with karma. So imagine karma, something like a moral form of gravity. You cannot negotiate with gravity. You can't be on the top of a burning building and talk to gravity and say, you know what, I know that in general, when you jump off a building, you die. But this once, just this once, I am trying to save my life, not end my life. The building's on fire. I need out. Just this once, would you not pull me down? Let me go up. You can't negotiate with gravity. It has no power to self-regulate or overcome its own laws. Well, that's like karma. It's a powerful thing to have a personal God who can consider your requests. And that's what we call miracles, right? It is when a personal God considers your request to overcome natural laws. Well, if there's no personal being who has power over natural laws, there's no miracles. So, humans are governed, all beings actually are governed by karma. And karma is a cruel taskmaster because you can't negotiate with it. It just responds. It can never make an exception. Karma cannot forgive. And when you think about what forgiveness is, it's a personal, all-knowing God who has a legitimate rightful claim against you, who sets it aside and doesn't hold it against you. It's a choice of his will. When we forgive one another, it's a choice of our conscious will. Well, if what is ultimate, karma and the non-existence stuff, has no self-awareness, it cannot forgive. So pantheistic religions do not have a theology of forgiveness, which really sucks, because then everything you do is always and forever on your account. You cannot ever have it set aside. We'll look at karma later, but the only way to overcome negative karma, it cannot be set aside. You can just make good karma to hopefully offset it. But we'll come back to that. All right, we'll go to question 4, and then I'm going to take a little break with you. All right, so what happens when we die? Well, here's where karma really comes in. Remember, in theism, we said, well, everybody has one life, a physical life, and then there's the end of the physical life, and then there's judgment, and God will assign heaven or hell based on certain criteria. It was different between Muslims, Christians, and Jews, but that was the basic story. Well, in pantheism, there's no being who's external to the universe who's going to judge. And there's no beginning or end or reality outside of the universe. Remember when we talked about heaven, we said it's where God is. It's God's reality. And currently, until the heaven comes to earth, in the new heavens and the new earth, we are in separate realities. In pantheism, there's nothing external to the universe. And so this is just over and over and over again. So when individuals die, they are reincarnated. When the universe dies, it comes back into being. When we get to Hinduism, let's say, the gods, they are just types of beings who are subject to karma. They are constantly reincarnated. And so they're not able to escape this reality either. There's no getting out of the universe. There's nothing transcendent. In our lecture on theism, I emphasized that God is transcendent, external to the universe, and yet immanent. In pantheism, there is nothing transcendent. There's nothing external to the universe. Everything is within the universe. So, reincarnation. Now, I'll say this repeatedly. In the United States, when we hear the word reincarnation, we think there's one being who then leaves this body and just pops directly into another body. And this is because we believe in a soul, an individual, eternal, kind of self-aware entity called a soul, or an ego, or whatever you want to call it. But that's not the pantheistic understanding. So when we see Buddhism and Hinduism particularly, they're not talking about karma as the direct transmigration of the soul from one body to another. We'll look at what they do mean, but they don't mean that I just pop out of this body and then get born into another body. We're not going to see the direct transmigration of a soul until we get to the 1800s and the New Age reformulation of Buddhism and Hinduism. So in the United States, sometimes I hear people say, oh yeah, that's just karma. And it's kind of this idea of direct and immediate payback, where you do something mean, and then whomp, you get a flat tire, and then that kind of pays back that bad karmic action. That's not how karma works. In pantheistic religions, karma is, it's like student loans. It just accrues and accrues and accrues, and the interest just grows. And so it goes throughout life cycles. It kind of disperses generally throughout life cycles. So you might be paying back karmic debt from 4,000 life cycles ago. It just kind of, just a dot of it has come to this life cycle. We'll talk more about it when we get to Hinduism and Buddhism, because they have different understandings of how karma follows the existences. But don't think of it as just popping out of a body into the next body. That's a very Western notion of reincarnation. The Eastern notion, we'll get more detail when we get to the specific religions. All right. Hey, that's the first 4 questions. We just have 4 more to go for pantheism. I'm going to take a break on this recording to make it easier to upload, and then we'll resume in the next recording. I miss you guys. See you soon. Well, probably not. I'll see you in my office hours.